Welcome back to the SOTI video series. My name is David and I am joined by Richard, both of us senior principal instructors here at SOTI.
And in this video, we'll be walking you through how to configure an MQTT broker to use a server certificate, which as a reminder is a requirement before both printers and SOTI Connect components can communicate with the broker.
And is that an easy process getting those pieces of information given to a HiveMQ, Richard?
Well, there is a configuration file that's required to be edited, but the great news is we provide the information that you need to configure on SOTI Online Help. Let's take a look now. So David, you've previously referred to the SOTI Pulse page and the information and the downloads and certified device list. So where can we find this configuration file that we need?
Well, it is also in the documentation area. Now, we have shown you when we were looking at the pre-requirements, but in this case, just go to installing SOTI Connect and you should be able to find a section over there for installing the MQTT HiveMQ protocol adapter, or right, what Richard is showing. And over here you will be able to find an example of that MQTT configuration that's needed to open the TLS connection. So if we keep going down, I think you can find it right there. So let me explain. The file that allows you to set up the new connector or listener, it's called a TLS TCP listener within the MQTT broker configuration file. So you're adding or replacing the existing listener with a TLS based one. So this is very important to know because you have to make sure you also place this information in the right location of the file. Is that correct, Richard?
That's it. And as you're looking at these notes, please note as well, if you're somebody who prefers to have a README document as well as looking at this video, please note that the steps that we're working through are also available on the online help, as you can see here. But yeah, let's copy this and then let's see where this is added and where this configuration file is for HiveMQ, so we can just get everything now set up and ready to use with SOTI Connect.
Sounds good.
Okay, so just before we go into our HiveMQ configuration file, I'm actually going to go back to our certificates folder, and this is where we had our key store. Now, for easy reference, I'm actually going to copy the key store, because I'm actually going to put it in the same configuration file for HiveMQ, so it can be referred to very easily. Now I'll go to my HiveMQ folder. In our case, I put this in program files and HiveMQ. And previously we went into the bin or the bin folder to actually run HiveMQ. This time we're going to go for conf, short for config, and this is where we should see the specific configuration file. And this is the one we're going to be editing, and we can see it's an XML format. So this contains all of the settings that HiveMQ reads when it starts up, and this is the one we need to change. However, just before I do, I'll paste in the key store, and I'll also do one other thing. Take a copy of our configuration file.
Yeah, just in case you need to revert back because something didn't work out for you, you have a clean way to get it going without having to re-download and redeploy HiveMQ. So it's just an easy hack just to make sure that your implementation goes smoothly.
Once we've done this, I'll edit the configuration file. And we can see this is where it read the information of just that standard TCP listener and its default settings, port 1883 as we saw earlier, and the bind address. And this is where we need to add. The extra information.
Okay, let me get a go on this. Now, I remember I mentioned that we have to add a new listener or replace the existing listener with the one that is able to use an actual certificate. So instead of being TCP, it's going to be TLS. So my assumption, and correct me if I'm wrong, Richard, is that we're going to have to either get rid or to add a new listener within the listener stacks that's defined in this XML file. And I think that's where we will be pasting the configuration that was provided to us in the documentation. Am I correct?
That would be correct, yes. And if anyone's not so familiar with XML, please note what we have here is a series of opening and then closing tags, and that's the way that the machine reads the XML. So we're looking at the port, we have an opening tag for port and then a closing tag for port, and we know that the port is 18883, for example. So we're just going to make sure that we're inserting the new TCP TLS listener within the correct opening and closing tags so that the file will be read correctly.
Perfect. All right, so let's bring it over from our documentation and see how we need to modify this file to make sure that when we launch again MQTT, it is able to open a successful TLS connection on the port that we decide to connect through TLS.
Okay, so there are two ways of doing this. If we want our TCP TLS listener to be working alongside the existing one, we could paste it in here.
And there's a reason why you may want to keep this even momentarily, and that is for testing registration or successful registration of the broker with the protocol adapter without having to add the complication of the certificates that you use to sign and create a TLS connection. So if for any reason you're trying to do the registration of the broker using TLS and it fails, you can always test the simpler TCP connection, and then maybe the issue is connectivity or maybe it is with the certificate. So it's really a good idea to leave it for now, and then you can remove it after.
Yep, and if we do need to remove it after, we'll just select the relevant section, just make sure that we're referring to our opening and closing tags correctly, and we could remove that section if needed.
Yes. So how about we leave a couple of spaces in between the two listeners so then our viewers can easily identify what exactly we are going to be now working on.
Yeah, that's it. And this is the one that we're looking for with our service certificate. So we're going to make some edits to this one. Now, firstly, please note that the port that can be used primarily is port 8883. Secondarily, port 8884 can be used if you have a port discrepancy or another program that's using port 884. But in our case, I use 8883 for now. Now, after that, we then have our key store information, and we need to make some changes on this.
But we need to reference the location of our key store and provide some passwords so that MQTT can access the keys within the key chain.
That's it. So, and keep in mind that there are two passwords. So the first one is the key store password, and then the second one is the key chain password. Remember that we spoke about two passwords needing to be set.
So you're kind of reversing it. So the first password you set up when you introduced or imported the private key, that's the key pair. And the second one, which is when you exported the JKS, that's the actual key chain password. That's the key store password.
Okay, so let's just add the relevant information in. For us, I put our key store in the same configuration folder. So I can just copy the address. I'll paste this in here. And add the file name at the end, which in our case was called MQTT keystore.jks, and then I'll add in our passwords.
Now, while Richard adds the passwords, please know that this is the one thing that I notice a lot of people tend to make mistakes just by not adding the correct path to the JKS or the incorrect name, or just be very, very careful, because this is a common mistake a lot of people make.
Once this is done, I'll click Save. But please note, this isn't going to make these changes to HiveMQ straight away. As I said, this is a configuration file that HiveMQ reads when it starts up. Now, as said previously, there are further extensions and add-ons that are available for HiveMQ. So once we've tested this, if we want HiveMQ to be installed and run as a Windows service, meaning that it will automatically start when the machine starts up, this is something we might need to consider. But in our case, we will just start the batch file again.
But remember that if you have that batch file already running in the command prompt in this server, you have to stop it before you try to run it again.
Great point. You can't have two instances of HiveMQ running at the same time. Now we've made our changes though. Okay, let's now right click and run HiveMQ as an administrator, and we'll see if those changes have taken effect.
And if you follow the instructions shown here, I don't expect any surprises. So as we can see right here, we have two listeners now up and running. We have one in port 1883, which is the original TCP listener. And now we have a TLS TCP listener on port 8883.
And if you do get any failures when this runs, please keep in mind the prerequisites we mentioned previously, making sure that Java can be referred to correctly, making sure that the configuration file for HiveMQ is there. And please note that there are some password considerations. Even though you might be using a robust password, some symbols and characters in that password may not be accepted on the XML configuration as HiveMQ reads it.
All right, okay. So I think it's time for us to test our registration. And just what you guys know, this is what I always tell my classes. This is where you know whether or not your souffle is going to come out and is going to be fluffy and is going to be up and running. For those that are culinary experts, souffles can very easily, flatten up. So if your registration works, it is almost guaranteed that your devices will also register properly or add properly to the broker once they try to establish communication. So this is probably the most critical part, in my opinion, of this deployment when you're actually doing MQTT.
Yes, this is the moment of truth, really making sure that all the configuration is set up. And as a reminder, where we'll be going to actually reflect this, we're registering the relevant MQTT protocol adapters to the broker that we have running. So we go down to administration within the SOTI Connect console, we go to system management, and we can see the different protocols that utilize MQTT. We've got this one here, SOTI SDK MQTT. To name a few manufacturers and devices that use this, this will include Printronix and Toshiba, and also this one here, Zebra JSON RPC, which again uses the MQTT broker but is specific to modern Zebra thermal printers. Let's use this one as our example of registration, if that sounds okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, both the settings will be the same. We select registering the protocol adapter, and here we'd need to specify the host address, the port, if there is a username and password, so role-based access on the MQTT broker, we'd specify that there, along with whether there is a client certificate, which in our case there isn't, and also our root CA. So in our case, if we go up to the top, what's our host address?
Well, that's going to be the fully qualified domain name of the server that is hosting HiveMQ in this case. And I think we have that one. We've used it a couple of times because we're kind of putting it all in the same box. And yeah.
That's it. And so this is on the same server as we've got everything else in SOTI Connect installed. But please note, if you have requirements to install HiveMQ on a separate machine, this process will still work. You would just need to specify the host address of whatever machine is running HiveMQ. Do you remember our port?
It is 8883. And just so everybody knows, you need to make sure that the Windows Defender system where HiveMQ is running allows these connections to be established, because that's another thing that could potentially affect you as well.
That's it. Of course, now we're looking at a third-party component. It may not be one of those default ports that the SOTI Connect installer opens. So do check your local firewalls along with any other firewalls within your network communications that you may need to consider.
Absolutely.
As said, username and password. If we're using role-based access for HiveMQ, we'll need to specify these here. And if we have client certificates, we'd also need to specify them. But for us, we don't need to worry about this particular part.
I want to add that if you're using the commercial version of MQTT, the role base will actually be available for you guys to actually use and increase security.
For us, we just need to specify our CA certificate. I'll go to our documents, I'll go to our certificates, and which certificate are we choosing here?
I believe we're going to be using the PEM certificate.
That is it. We're using the public component of the root certificate of which our server certificate is signed from. And when we start enrolling devices after this step, we'll actually be using exactly the same certificate to pass the devices. So you'll hear the PEM certificate being referred to a few more times.
And also everything that you are seeing right here that we're using to register, it's exactly the same information your printers will need to establish connection to the broker as well.
And there we go. Tick. We said that's the moment of truth. It's the proof of the pudding, as David said. And there we are. We have our Zebra JSON RPC. We have an arrow next to that, and we can see that there is an instance now connected, which is our protocol adapter registered to HiveMQ.
So at this point, that means that our connection of Connect all the way to the broker, to that middleware that now will allow us to get printers in, is established, is good to go. And now we're ready to get those printers configured properly, be able to speak to that broker, and I think that connection change will be completed and we will have full access to manage those printers after that.
Thank you for joining us for this video where we've configured an MQTT broker to use a server certificate and registered a SOTI Connect protocol adapter to it.
And as always, don't forget to visit and subscribe to the SOTI YouTube channel, and for further tutorials, as well as for more information about the SOTI One platform, visit us at soti.net.